So let's start with our first panelist. Aradana is globally identified as an authority on travel, tourism, and hospitality industry. She has 2 decades of experience across 70 countries in 4 continents. She's currently CEO and founder of Aptmind Partners, that is a trusted advisor to governments, family offices, and international organizations. She also serves as a board member and steering committee member of World Tourism Forum in Lucerne. She's a passionate advocate of the transformative power of tourism. She spends a lot of her time engaging presidents, prime ministers, and tourist ministers on using tourism as a force for good. It's a real honor to welcome her today and to open our panel with her.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Aradhana Koala. I'm sheltered in place in London at my home. Funny enough, never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that I would live to see a day where shaking hands, hugging, and personal meetings will become a symbol for you're an absolute idiot. While washing hands, wearing masks, and buying toilet paper would make the list of cool things to do and talk about. But that is the reality of the world we live in. That is the reality we face. This is the fastest slowdown on record, fastest market correction on record, fastest rise in unemployment on record. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we are in the middle of what I call a black swan of all black swan events. Now, I am tasked here, as Anna just shared with you, to talk about what I think is happening in the world of travel. But honestly, I think the better question is what is not happening in the world of travel, because in the travel, tourism, and hospitality world, things have pretty much come to a standstill. And as unfortunate as it sounds, the truth is, it has taken the world to stop traveling for everyone to finally realize the importance and significance of travel, tourism, and hospitality as an industry. And if there was one thing that I would really think we need to do, ought to do now, is really stop talking about tourism as a sector that accounts for 10% of global GDP, and stop talking about tourism as a sector that employs 1 out of 10 people and creates 1 out of new 5 jobs, but really stop talking and instead walk the talk. No one has spoken about this yet, but the coronavirus is obviously medically contagious, which we all know, but I think it is way more economically contagious. We are looking at death rates from the virus. As unfortunate as that sounds, we will be even more, I think, which is worse off, is we'll be looking at death rates from a bad economy, which can be worse off. As we speak, US is set to lose 4.6 million jobs in the next 10 days. This is across all sectors. And specific to our industry, if I go by the latest WTTC figures, we're looking at an impact on 50 million jobs, 50 million jobs. The second thing that I really want to speak about today, and it is rather broad and generic, but I think very important, because there has been much that has been written about the similarity of the COVID crisis with the 9/11 attacks, with the global financial crisis of 2008, and even in some instances, the Y2K, which was the 2000. What I want to highlight here is if we have to draw parallels and similarities, we have to go back not just 12 years to the global financial crisis, we actually need to go back 102 years to the Spanish pandemic flu of 1918, 1919. Now, why do I say this? The fall from grace for the banks is still very fresh in our minds. We all remember the 2008 economic crisis. But the fact is, it's a mess that the banks created and they paid for it. What happened after the global financial crisis was there was a very severe and a very prolonged economic recession. It took us 5 years, if not more, to completely come out of it. And it was only in the last 5 years that we've actually managed to clean up the banking system. In contrast, if you look at the flu, which happened in 1918 and 1919, the flu pandemic, which is a closer comparison as an epidemic, it lasted only 7 months. 5% of the global population died as a result of the flu, and 1/3 got infected. And going by the latest experts, this is exactly the figures that we're looking for the COVID crisis. We didn't have internet back in 1918, so it's difficult because we don't have a lot of data, but it shows that businesses suffered anywhere between 40 to 70% across the board. And the only industry that saw a growth or increase in activity was the drug industry, which is the pharma industry, or the healthcare in our case at this point in time. Now, experts estimate that in the last quarter, probably the economy will turn around. Whether or not this happens remains to be seen. But on a positive note, I have no doubt that when this crisis ends, travel and tourism will be ideally positioned to continue on its explosive growth trajectory, which is what we've had for the last 2 decades. The second thing that I want to share is we're talking about surviving in the long term, but to survive in the long term, we need to survive in the short term. Funny enough, I wrote an article just as early as last week, uh, and this was about an urgent need for open source solutions, how we as an industry need to share the solutions to the toughest problems that we have ever faced as an industry. And the key idea of the article was, while we wait for bailouts, why don't we rack our brains to come up with temporary respite options for hotels, all kinds of businesses, so we can numb the pain from the cost of cancellations and closures. What I find most interesting is I got started with 5 ideas, a range of ideas, like making hotels into hospitals, converting them into care homes, retraining hospitality staff to become care workers, etc. And every single idea has already been actioned and implemented by governments far and wide, from UK to Sweden to India. So what I'm trying to say, that for the first time in history, the pace of change around us is absolutely unprecedented. Companies that turned profit 2 months ago are on the verge of bankruptcy, and there are looming fears of layoffs everywhere. So in this environment, you can either choose to succumb to the situation or face it head on. I'm conscious of the 5 minutes that I have. So if there are 2 things that I can leave you with, that I think are critical in this situation, is number 1, think of weathering this storm as a long-term investment in the business. You need to come out of this. So focus on coming out of this for the next 6 to 12 months. Number 2, look after your employees. Your team, your staff will look up to you, and you will need to be, or you will be expected to provide or be a role model, because how you behave at this point in time in crisis will not be forgotten. Finally, if I can conclude, please remember that the COVID crisis is what is happening to you. It is not who you are. If we need, and we will, emerge from this crisis stronger and better, we obviously need strategy, but we also need humanity. We need positivity. We need generosity, and we need to be working together as an industry. Um, and this is how I say we need all the good of the head, all the good of the heart, and all the good of the hands to come together to make it work. Thank you.